It's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. So today we are making these Halloween themed villain cookies. I say Halloween cookies because 'tis the season, but honestly you could make these all year round. If you're new to my channel, let's get the basics out of the way first. So I will put my sugar cookie recipe in the right hand corner so you can access that super easily. It's a very reliable, simplistic recipe, and I'm using my pipe and flood consistency for royal icing. If you want to know more about what I mean, then go ahead and check out this other video in the right hand corner where I explain it very in depth. But if you just want the quick version, use 1 cup of icing sugar, also known as confectioner sugar or powdered sugar, to 1 tablespoon of meringue powder. And I like to use meringue powder, but you can use egg whites. I just find it's a lot easier, a lot more shelf stable when I use meringue powder. And then I add quantities of about a tablespoon of water at a time until I reach my desired consistency. Now I know that can be a bit of an annoying recipe, especially if you're just starting out, and I get it, you want a more definitive recipe, but the problem is that this royal icing recipe reacts differently in different environments. I've even used the exact same recipe and quantities from one province to another, and because of that little bit of a climate change, it really did affect it. So I recommend that you add in just a little bit of water at a time. I mix it up in my KitchenAid. You really do want that air incorporated. It makes for a much better and fluffier consistency of royal icing, which is going to give you that puffy look instead of that sunken in look when it comes to decorating cookies. And the general rule of thumb is the thicker it feels and you want it a little bit more runny, then add more water. If you want it to be a little bit more thickened up, add a little bit more meringue powder and a little bit more icing sugar. Now I realize we skipped over a little bit of that apple explanation. So when it comes to the apple, what I did was I did the red part first, then I stuck it in my oven to dehydrate at 175 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 5 to 7 minutes, just until that top layer is dry so I could move on to that leaf portion. This is all to ensure that leaf portion and the red portion doesn't all meld together, because then you're not going to get a very defined looking apple. While I was waiting for those portions to dehydrate, I did start on the mirror, is what that kind of is supposed to be. And I just went with a green outline. I'm going to show you what to do with that later. But now we get to do the fun part of the poison apple. We get to make things really drippy. It should kind of look like it's coming out of that boiling vat or whatever it was that she was using, some sort of cauldron in the movie. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I apologize if that is wildly inaccurate. But basically, we just want to put that skeleton shape in there first, then we can fill in the rest with all of that drippy stuff. Now you could totally just leave it like that and it looks really great, but I'm going to go ahead and airbrush some details in. For the mirror, I'm going to airbrush this first so that I don't get all of this airbrushing on the edge work that I'm going to do later. You can also skip this part if you don't have an airbrush system. Highly recommend you invest in one. I will put down in the description box below the one that I have. And right here, we're just adding a little bit more definition to these poison apples. Makes it look a little bit more spooky, a little bit more fun. I'm using a dark green moss color. You could also go with black or a dark red for this. It would still look really good any way you choose. The main idea here is to make sure that you aim for the edges just so you kind of kiss the sides with it. Your airbrushing is actually very light, but those colors are very pigmented, so it comes on strong. By the way, for the royal icing, I did utilize Chef Master food gel as well as some Americolor food gel to color things. For the red, I really made sure to use a good amount, but not too much. Keep in mind that after you dehydrate your cookies, your colors will brighten up. And for the green, I used just a little bit of leaf green and a little bit of lemon yellow just to give it that lime color. Keeping in line with all the same principles I've taught you so far, make sure that your layers are nice and dry in between. Want to make sure that airbrush color is nice and dry, and it does dry fairly quickly because we use a very light hand when applying it. If you oversaturate your cookie a little bit, it will take more time for that to dry, so just be careful with that. When I first started learning how to decorate cookies, there was nothing I wanted more than to learn how to do all of these swirly patterns. So I spent a lot of time working on this, on some acetate and just piping with royal icing over and over and over again. And the reason we use acetate is just so that you're not wrecking an actual cookie. And the key here to getting these swirls is actually holding the piping bag up higher than you think. The higher you hold it up, the more time you have to put down that swirl. I see this time and time again when people are starting out with cookie decorating. People want control over their piping bag. So in order to do that, they end up making the mistake of holding down the icing, squeezing it out, and then dragging the tip through, or trying to keep that tip as close as possible, when in reality, to gain more control, you need that piping bag to be further away. I also want to mention that I really do highly recommend tipless piping bags. I just don't have any left. So I am using a number 2 tip for everything today. When filling in that pipe and flood consistency, I did switch to a number 3 or a number 4 just because I wanted a faster pipe. But for all of the detailed work, I used a number 2. So for the faces here, I did a little bit of an outline with some edible marker, and I projected the image on there. Now I can do this freehand, but when I'm doing a project that requires me to do this multiple times, I do use a projector. This is just a great thing to have. I used to be very against it and I would freehand every single thing, but honestly, I am not skilled enough to make sure that everything will look uniform without the projector. So although the image might look passable, or it might look like the character, when I'm doing something like an order for multiple cookies of the same thing, a projector is what I need to ensure that things look relatively uniform. I'm using these edible paints, but I completely understand if you don't want to invest in edible paints as well as gel food colorant. So a little trick that I used to use was using gel food colorant mixed with a little bit of vodka, or you can use lemon extract if you don't want to use any alcohol whatsoever, and it just paints on very beautifully. I will say if you're using gel food colorant though, really have a light hand because it will go on very pigmented. That is one thing I like about the edible paints. It goes on nice and pastel, and it kind of gives that quality that I want without me having to mess around too much with the formula. I was getting impatient, so I didn't want to wait for the layers of paint to dry on her face. So you'll notice that I used a dab of black royal icing on her eyes, and then I put a little sprinkle dot on there. The reason I use a sprinkle dot instead of more royal icing or white paint is, again, to ensure that there's no bleeding through of color, because I'm doing it quickly and I wanted it to be done. And I really like the sharpness that that technique gives. I wanted the evil queen to look like she was looking into this creepy, misty type mirror. So in order to create that experience visually, I took some of that pipe and flood consistency and then I dragged a little bit of the black through with that white. And it's a great way to cheat so that you're not bringing that black all the way down to the bottom, because I feel like that would look too blocky, but it also gives that appearance of what I want in the mirror, like it's not totally clear what she's seeing. After everything was fully dried, yes, I did dehydrate between layers again on this cookie. I got to paint everything with edible gold using my brand new favorite, Generate Cakes Dazzle Dust. They sent me a ton of their Dazzle Dust. So excited to try out the other colors. This one is great. I think it's an antique gold, which works really well with this particular cookie. And me being me, of course, I have to put some edible glitter on here. So again, going in with that pipe and flood consistency, bringing up those brush strokes the opposite way now that I did before, and adding on some of that edible glitter. Again, a step that you can totally skip. Here is the finished product. And I know what you guys want to hear. You want to hear about the pricing in 2023. And let me tell you, these cookies took me a very long time. So the Evil Queen cookies would be $10.50 each, and the apple cookies would be $6 each. And this is all in Canadian. Two things I want to say before we go. Be sure to sign up for the Bake Fest if you haven't already, where I will be sharing all of my YouTube secrets, but also there are so many other bakers sharing all of their secrets as well. You can still go and check it out. I will put that information down in the pinned comment below. And I started a baking podcast. If you haven't already seen that, definitely go and check it out. I'm so excited about it. It was super fun filming the first episode, which is already out. And that is all I need to say, except thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!